Well, I've been buying and shooting these guns for quite some time, and when I first started out, there was not a lot of readily available or easily accessible information on these guns, so we had to learn pretty much everything, I guess kind of like by the hard way or just by experimenting and that sort. But now we've got other methods of doing that, and one of the things that, of course, you're always doing on the guns when you're shooting these things, you're taking them apart and putting them back together again, and you're always being involved with this. This wedge is always involved in the operation, and we put that back in our barrel slot like that, and kind of wrap that in. And found out the further you wrap that in, tighter the barrel gets. Sometimes it gets so tight up against the cylinder here that the cylinder won't actually turn when you operate the hammer. So what we tried to do is just pound it into the right, the correct length, and so that wouldn't happen. Well, I got a comment here a while back on one of my videos, and the fellow passed on some information that that I wasn't thinking about, or wish I could say that it was my intelligence or it was in my DNA, but it wasn't, and I'd like to give credit to that person that commented. I could search back through my comments and find out who that was, but point is, I want to pass the information on that he mentioned, and I thought it was really enlightening to know that the correct way of setting that gap is not with the wedge. Let's just kind of slide this barrel off here if we can. I'm going to kind of demonstrate what we're talking about here. There's a hole bored obviously in the barrel here that this arbor, we'll call it, slides into, and of course this could be bored quite a ways in there, or this could be shortened some. And if that's the case, then this barrel would be able to, it's going to stop down here with where these two pins are, true enough, but it can also wobble just a little bit this way. I'm going to exaggerate that because there is some play in the fit between the arbor here and that hole that's bored in there. So when this kind of locks up, and if you pound the wedge in, especially if you pound it in too hard, it can tweak that barrel back just enough sometimes to bind the cylinder up. You want it close in here so we don't get a lot of blowout from the sides, but by doing that, by pounding that wedge in, which is what we always did, you could lock that, actually get it to the point where there was very little, if any, gap, and it would kind of lock up, especially once you got fouling and stuff in it. So the comment that was made was that the proper length of the arbor here, or the properly drilled hole in here, you won't be able to, it'll bottom out basically, like this one does, which is correct. If I put it in there like this, and then try to turn it down, I'm going to find out that it clears, just barely clears the frame down here. And no matter how hard I pound that wedge in there, I'm not going to be able to tweak this barrel back against the cylinder, because this end of the arbor here is bottoming out on that hole, and you're not going to get that to shove into that metal there. So that would be the way I think these guns were designed. So that eliminates the situation where if you pound the wedge in too far, you'll end up jamming that end of the barrel up against the cylinder here. And I can demonstrate on a gun that I've had for quite some time. When I put this together here and ram this thing together as far as I can and try to turn that one down like this, it actually hits the frame, and there's probably, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 thousandths that this one is in this way too far. So what would happen with this one is if you pounded the wedge in too hard or too far, the arbor is not going to be stopped by that end of the hole back here. And that's where this comment was made, where the person that made it, what they'll do is put some shims, maybe 2,000 thick or whatever, down in there one at a time, and get that so it bottoms out exactly like this gun over here does. So when it bottoms out, you can turn it down and just barely clears the frame here. I have an example here. This gun was manufactured in the mid-80s. It's a very nice gun. It's a fire blued barrel cylinder. Action's very nice. Locks up tight. Probably a couple thousandths gap, maybe 3 between the end of the barrel here and the cylinder. So, very nice functioning gun. Okay, I've taken the screw here out of the barrel so that barrel wedge can actually be driven in a little further to see what would happen. Will it lock up that cylinder so I can't turn it? So let's put it in the half cock position and give this wedge a couple of raps. Hitting that very hard. Okay, there we've got it. I can't move that cylinder, and also I can't draw the hammer back anymore. So, so that's kind of what happens with that barrel wedge. Actually tweaks that barrel just a little further to the rear. And of course, if you've got a lot of slop in there to begin with, probably not going to notice that. But if your gun is set up pretty tight tolerances, that's definitely going to make a difference. I think manufacturing has come a long way on these guns. This is a fairly recent purchase. It's a Pieta, and if I take a look at how this one is set up, slide the cylinder off here. So this might be one of the first things you might want to do with some of your guns or new ones that you purchase to see how this works. Now sometimes that barrel won't slide on there. I don't know if these things are just a little out of round or what that is, but you have a kind of harder time pushing that on. But I'm going to see when this one bottoms out, and I think it'll be right about there. You can hear it snap. So right now the arbor here has bottomed out in that hole. All right, let's see if how the gap is here, to see if this section here is actually back further than it should be, or if it's pretty close to lined up with the frame down here. I'll do that by turning this down a bit. Probably can't see that, but I'll turn it, pushing in at the same time I'll turning down. Okay, and it just barely clears the frame. And that's exactly where things should be. So on this gun, if we were to pound that wedge in here, pound it in tight, all it'll do is tighten up the arbor here to that hole back here, into the hole, and it shouldn't move the end of the barrel here back into the cylinder, which would be a bad thing. And the good news about this too would be that when you take your gun apart and put it back together again, the barrel is not going to be tweaked a little bit, so your sighting should be a whole lot better than every time you take the gun apart, pound the barrel wedge in a little tighter, a little looser one time or the other. That barrel thing just changes a little bit in the angle, which could throw your sighting off. So anyway, hopefully this information is helpful, and we're happy that someone made a comment here regarding this thing so we could pass it on.